Do you want to share stuff about that? Like, what do you actually think about all the stuff that Elon's getting into with his like political stuff? Is that something you want to talk about?
Um, it's like personally, I've never been allowed to share my political leanings
Okay.
like ever as a journalist because
Yeah.
it could get me fired.
Sure.
Like legit, even if like I've seen people fired over like a tweet, like so I think I've been like trained for so long just not even to get involved with that. But I do think that there is something to be said for, you know, like refraining from sharing that information as like a CEO or, a public figure of a big company. However, at the same time, I don't know, Elon's Elon, right? So,
Yeah.
um, what do I think about it? I mean, I'm not going to be selling my Tesla stock anytime soon. So,
Right.
yeah, I don't know. It
Yeah.
does seem like it's escalating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's a new headline about, I guess he just got sued today or something, you
Did
know.
he? I didn't even see that.
Yeah, I guess a Twitter stockholder sued him, but
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's probably just like it's probably no different than the stuff he was facing while I mean at Tesla I think he gets sued all the time. It's just we don't
right,
really hear about it. So it's some could be any rogue investor that feels like either for
totally.
publicity or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I mean it's like I get 100% what you're coming from too, and especially being in that sort of background as a journalist. Like I can't even imagine like because really like the job is to be impartial, like you're
Totally.
just bringing forward information, bringing forward news,
Right.
so I 100% get how as a journalist you at the very least you should never either show your bias or report with a bias, right? You should be
Oh yeah.
100% down the middle, right?
Right.
But like at the same time I think it's impossible for people to not have opinions, you know what I'm saying?
Oh
Like
yeah.
that's one thing, and it's about like separating opinion from the job, you know.
Right.
Did you
Right.
find that difficult while you were being a journalist? Like how did you even what was that like, because that must have been difficult to handle, or did you get
Um,
used to it over time?
I think I got used to it. I mean, yeah, it was just like it was not worth getting in trouble, and like I
Yeah.
said, I've seen people have the plug pulled on them, literally lose their jobs for something that seems so innocent and so minor, like a tweet or like wearing a hat, that says a certain candidate. So um
Wow. Like
yeah,
lost job, there's no second chances, like you're
no,
out
done,
immediate. Okay.
done. So and I mean, it's good. It's interesting. I made a video recently and I addressed a comment that a viewer made, which is they said, Ellie always starts a conversation, but she never inserts herself into the discussion. And it's
Hmm.
true. I always say, I want to hear from you guys and I ask people some sort of a question. And so I responded to this in my video and I said, for years, I was like not really allowed to insert myself, so to speak, because usually I'm asking you guys for like an opinion and, like some sort of a leaning or whatever. And then all these people were commenting. I was kind of surprised. They're like, no, don't change up your style. Like, please don't become, don't give your commentary. We have enough of that. We
Hmm.
like the way that you have journalistic integrity and just report the news. And so I was really like glad to hear that they like respected the way that I, you know, do my videos and they don't want they don't want me to be like these YouTubers that are you just kind of unhinged maybe, which is fine for me. Like I
Me.
don't yeah, like I don't want to do that either. And I think unfortunately, I think one guy he's like, "Oh, I'm leaving now because now it sounds like you're going to turn into giving your own opinion." And I was just trying to defend myself because I guess the way that I read the guy's comment is that Ellie doesn't have anything going on in her mind to like form an opinion, but I'm like, no, hold
Yeah.
up, I do. I just I'm not trying to pick a side. It's not about me. It's like, here's the facts. Here's the latest headline of the day. What do you guys think? So
Yeah.
hopefully it didn't backfire on me too much. I think for the most part, it's just confirmed that people like, getting the news unbiased. So
Yeah. I feel like there's such a hunger for it I think that's really the big thing, especially nowadays. And I don't know how you feel about this because you were a journalist for 8 years or a little over 8 years, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like the market for unbiased, as close to the truth as possible, at least for me, I haven't, I'm 35 years old. I haven't been around long enough to be like, this is what it was like with Walter Cronkite. I haven't been around long enough, but it seems like there is a dire hunger and thirst for non-partial, straight down the middle. Just tell me what the hell is going on. And it doesn't even have to be politics. It doesn't have to be, it's anything. It's anything. And I think anybody who attempts to do that, I think is going to be extremely successful because of that thirst. At the same time, though, like I wonder at the same time, I hope there's still a forum. Like, for example, if I were to use your channel as an example, right? People really appreciate the fact that you come forward and you are unbiased in everything that you do. But at the same time, I hope that doesn't mean that people are not going to want to hear your ideas or even your opinions. I feel like an opinion in itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It's the fact that we have such a weird conversation around ideas that's so divisive, I feel like, because ideas on their own is not really a bad thing. Like, why is it so bad that somebody shares their opinion? You know what I'm saying? Have you thought about that at all? Like how do you think about that within that context? Like, if there was a way for you to get your opinions out in a manner so that people didn't view it as biased, but just your opinion, like, how do you think about that?
Well, I want to back up for a second just to something that you made me think of when you say that people are really hungry for getting just like the truth and, unbiased, impartial news. And I think that there is, rampant misinformation on social media combined with a distrust of like the mainstream media. And so even I would go and cover like protests at the state capitol for whatever it was. And people would be like, oh, what kind of spin are you going to put on this? And I'm like, no spin. Like some people didn't, not everyone, but some people did not trust me. Like they saw my mic flag, with the Fox News logo. And
people being like the general population or other peers?
Oh no, like people, general population.
Okay, got it.
My job is to like go to this protest and walk around with a mic and a camera and be like, hey, do you mind sharing your thoughts on abortion or whatever it is? And, so many people were just like, well, what kind of spin are you going to put on it? And it's like, no spin. You're going to give me a soundbite and I'm going to say, Joe Smith feels this way or this way. Enter soundbite. But so, I think that it's a tough time for yes, people want the truth, but I also think that there's like a lot of mistrust. I mean, look at everything with the pandemic and like how divisive health and safety became, like mistrust of the vaccine, kind of like a lot of conspiracies going on. And so it's like, it's a tough time.
Yeah. Where do you think that mistrust is rooted? Like how do you think, do you think about that at all? Like where could that mistrust potentially come from?
Ooh,
these are very big questions. I know.
That's a loaded question.
Welcome to the podcast.
Well, I think it also I'm like, ooh, I don't know, how much I want to share it. Cause I'm, like I said, it's like so ingrained in me to not point to one party or another party for influencing those things. Yeah. But
listen, if you're uncomfortable, you don't have to answer these questions, right? Like whatever you're comfortable with, you don't have to answer them just because I ask them. I just ask them because,
I think it's a problem. And I think one of the reasons why I see value in me becoming a full-time YouTuber, even though it's a little bit early still, I need a bigger following on my channel, but I think that people are turning to YouTube and YouTubers as their journalism outlet, whether they kind of realize consciously that they're seeking out news on YouTube, because I think people say, well, I don't watch the news, but it's like, no, you're like deep diving into Tesla and you follow like, all of these YouTubers that give you what you want. And so I just see a need for someone who's experienced to provide that news on a platform that people are turning to, because a lot of people don't want to watch news anymore. Like
Yeah.
I've seen this sinking ship for years now. TV news is struggling. It's been that way for years now, and I think it's just getting worse.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
it's so fascinating you say that, because it's just it's like I'm going to use Rob Maurer as an example. You know Rob Maurer, Tesla
yeah,
Daily?
yeah,
Yeah. He from what I understand, he started Tesla Daily as an example back in 2018 or whatever, 2019, as an individual who was trying to fight what was called a FUD at that time against Tesla. There was a lot of like new stuff going on around the company. And then he was a person that said, you know what, I'm going to create a channel that's dedicated to just bringing the truth about Tesla. I'm going to bring all these news articles, or I'm going to properly try to spell out as non-biased as possible. At least that's the vibe that I got from him. What the Tesla news actually are. And then he is news. Like he is the definition of news. And the fact that he has a following that come to him for trust, to me, is signaling a move away from like corporations or brands bringing the news to individuals, right? And I think the
totally.
Substack movement is sort of like that too. And I don't know if you're familiar with Substack. You might be or you might be not, but it's basically a platform where individual journalists basically. So, like, for example, Glenn Greenwald or Matt Taibbi or all these other journalist guys, they have a Substack, and then individuals can go pay them directly, like say $10 a month, and then they get reporting directly from the journalist himself, instead of like, say they go to New York Times and then they write in New York Times sometimes, right? So I'm seeing more of a shift towards individual people, like people that they trust. It's almost like Walter Cronkite days, but like for different segments. Like people are being way more picky about what they want to follow.
Right.
What
Totally.
what was like that thing? So you talked about how you've kind of seen the decay of TV news going, sort of like the decay of TV
Oh
news.
yeah.
What was the thing? What was the thing that you realized early on that's like, wow, okay, this is happening? What was the signal?
I think that when I entered the business, I had this idea that, it would, and people say this, oh, TV news sounds so glamorous. And it's like, so many people are surprised to know that most reporters like are doing all of it themselves. So like we're carrying the tripod and the camera around. We don't have a photographer with us. And we are what's called an MMJ, a multimedia journalist. And so when I realized that they were kind of like consolidating these multiple jobs for one person, I'm like, okay, that must be like, a budget thing. And then just, I don't know, hearing like more and more people, and I think the pandemic really like compounded this, is like, oh, wow, you're on the news. That's so cool. But I don't watch the news because it's sad. And I try to stay away from that. But good for you, And I'm like, well, like people don't want to consume this because it's sad. And like, so I think like there's, less viewership. Obviously, there's not a lot of money compared to like, I would have people tell me, well, in the 90s, it was the glory days. You made so much money. And I'm like, well, clearly I'm not in that boat. So, but I think a lot of people that are in the business, you're certainly not in it for the money unless you're in like a big market and you're the main face and you're one of the main anchors. You're not getting paid a lot.
Yeah.
But you're doing it for passion of storytelling, and you feel that your work is worthy, and you're getting the truth out and giving a voice to the voiceless. There's something different every day. There's rewarding aspects of it, but it starts to really take a toll on you. And I think people just, not everyone wants to, people want to tune it out. I mean, like look at the pandemic. It was like we couldn't escape it. It was very sad. So why would you want to add on to that and just consume, all this sad stuff? I don't know. Some
Yeah.
people are news junkies, but I think more people are like prioritizing mental health and maybe digesting all of that bad news is like not great.
Would you say all like that's a really interesting thing you just said because I'm wondering like I'll tell you that's why I stopped watching network television because it's doom story after doom story, right? Which but then my head goes to okay, have more sad things are more sad things happening or are we covering a disproportionate amount of sad things? How do you think about that?
Oh man. Um well, I know that we try to cover some positive stories, but we want leads. Not we, not me, but we as, the boss or the producer or whatever wants leads. And like, because people ask me that all the time. They're like, well, why can't you just do more stories about like puppies being adopted? And I'm like, because if we don't cover the school shooting or, this tragic story where these kids died because there were no, carbon monoxide detectors in their home. And then, covering those things inspires change. Okay, now they have, those detectors installed in all of the units at this housing, one story, I'm actually a specific story that I'm referring to is like these kids died in a fire because there were no smoke detectors in the home. And this was at like, a housing development for agricultural workers. And so after these kids died, they made sure to outfit every single one of those units with smoke detectors. Yeah. So like covering these things can bring about good changes. But so yeah, I don't know. I think that the thing too is like, because it's such a changing medium, I know that like my bosses have been really like, you have to be hitting it hard on social media. And like, we have to like win on social, like they don't even necessarily care so much about the TV product anymore. They want to win on the YouTube. They want to win on, the Facebook page. And so I think that they're just posting more because that's where people are. So you're like seeing it more. Like we don't worry about how many times we post a day. In fact, like you want to post like as much as like it's crazy, dude. It's like, so I think that it's just like news outlets trying to keep up.
Interesting.
And that's why you're seeing a lot of it because they're like, trying to keep up, trying to stay relevant.
I wonder how much that sort of, so I'm trying to separate out like, I understand that if we want news, it has to make money in some way because we need to pay journalists to go out to do the work. Obviously, like this is not no one's going to do that tough job unless they have something to work towards. Like it's, and if you're just going to have volunteer journalists, talk about corruption. Okay. Yeah. Like that's literally the worst case scenario. So I'm trying to like keep that in mind. At the same time though, I'm trying to wonder like as we transition towards a more like social media landscape, more stuff on the internet, and then really clicks and views are the things that are going to drive people going to a specific network or viewing a specific article or whatever. I wonder if the incentive structure is misaligned to I wonder if the incentive structure is misaligned somehow. So like, so say you live in an environment like sort of like we described where the network almost incentivizes you to post as many articles as humanly possible each day, because I'm guessing the more stuff you have out there, the more likely it is for somebody to see something that they want to view, and then they click on it and they go view it, right?
Right.
But
totally.
But how much of that is, oh man, like I don't even know how to verbalize it. Like, of course, you're always going to be trying to seek out stories that are going to, okay, so under that structure, is it correct that you would automatically try to seek out stories that are going to create the most likely scenario of somebody clicking on the link? Is that a true statement?
Oh, yeah. I think that like headline and, how you title the article. Unfortunately, yes, you want people to click, but at the same time, people hate clickbait. So you have to be like accurate in your title, but you're not just going to put like, city council holds meeting. It's like, what was like the emotional fiery thing, and how
Yeah.
can we get people to care about reading this? So yes, I think that there's definitely strategy involved, but sometimes people overly embellish, and
Hmm.
then people will comment on that. I mean, that's the thing too, is like, because it's on social media, you have a comment field where people can just kind of roast or shit on the article, right? And say
Yeah.
like, this was clickbait, this is
Yeah.
ridiculous, or this reporter knows nothing. So it goes both ways. It's not like you just put it out there and no one can call you out for providing bad journalism. So, you
Hmm.
know, um, yeah, but I think, yeah, the motivation is definitely to get as many people, flooding into whatever it is, YouTube or your website,
Yeah.
as possible.
I wonder too, like, I wonder if they move away from the news as is stated on the network, because it's almost like a downward spiral, right? So like, say if you're a news network, correct me if I'm wrong in this statement, but if you're a news network that's dependent on people viewing you, and then you start losing viewers, wouldn't that news network try to do whatever he can to bring viewers back to their network by showing maybe articles or specific pieces that are like used to drum up a certain type of emotion? And as they continue to lose viewers, will that get worse and worse over time? So it's like, what I'm envisioning is, as a news network loses more and more viewership, are they going to get more and more desperate for viewers? And is the what's would be categorized as news becomes more and more diluted because you're just trying to get viewers in, and then you have these crazy titles and everything? Like, is that a first statement that that's a possible thing that could happen? Like, how do you think about that? Because I think about that a lot. Like, if I view like a CNN or an MSNBC or whatever other news network that's not doing as well as they used to, I'm trying to think about, okay, so what incentives, like, how can they get viewers back? And I'm like, well, I do YouTube now, and I could see how they would want to create titles and thumbnails for their
Right.
articles that, like, just grab your attention. Just come on in, come on in. But I feel like the more you lose, the crazier you get in a way. Is
Um,
that? I mean,
I think every station is different, and I think, oh man, that is a hard question. I think that it depends, first of all, why they're losing viewers. Is it that the older population of viewers that they had is like straight up dying? Is
yeah.
it that they're losing viewers because they're not switching to a competitor, they're just switching off? Okay,
Hmm.
because that's a real thing, is that maybe people, they're not going to the guy next door, they don't want to associate with bad news. But I think what I'm noticing is more in-depth YouTube coverage from news outlets.
Mm.
So they are using that format to their advantage, and I'm seeing more, like in-depth CNBC or whatever it is, and they actually do a pretty good job.
Mm.
So I think that what is happening is that you have to adapt and overcome. And we have a shifting medium, and we have streaming services that now everyone's trying to get, I mean, even my old station had their own, app or whatever on a streaming service. So like, everything's changing. And it's not, I don't think like news is ever, or mainstream outlets are ever going to completely go away, but they're changing.
Hmm.
They're changing. And yeah, sometimes, I guess, to address another part of your question, like, I do see, like, sometimes news stations, maybe it's like your local San Diego news or something, they partner with some weird, kind of like more entertainment, one of those like viral video factories, and they'll share
Yeah.
that video, and it's like, okay, you're just doing this for like engagement. Like, this is purely engagement. There's nothing local about the story. This is like a video of some panda in China, but you're
Yeah.
sharing it because you want to engage people on social media. And so it's fair game. So yes, I'm seeing that, but I think like everyone's doing that.
Yeah. Man, it's such a tough place to be as an organization too. Like,
It
man,
just, Yeah.
And like, it just sucks.
Yeah.
It just sucks. Like if people don't want news in that respect anymore, like, and then you go and try to diversify your portfolio, say with like that type of content, like what are you then? Are you a news thing, or are you like a entertaining thing? And if the entertaining thing is really bringing a lot of money to your thing, then why would you focus on the news thing? But if we don't
I
have
think
that many news things, like over time, sorry. Yeah.
think about the word social media. I think they're just playing into that. And so I think that that's their way of having a happy balance. So it's not just all doom and gloom. It's like, oh, here's a cute video of a polar bear at a zoo that is, on the other side of the country. But, people still like it. People still comment, and they're still getting clicks.
Yeah.
So
I think there's another thing too. Like if I do switch on like a news channel, for example, I think I don't know what it is, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts. A lot of these outlets also have a lot of opinions too, right? Which is fine. Like they have people that convey opinions. But it seems like the line between opinion and news has become really blurred. Like say I want to view a news thing, a news site or a news channel. I don't know if I'm watching a person sharing their opinion about a news, or if I'm watching a person that's just telling me the news. And it seems like anytime I flip something on, it's always opinion. It's just opinion, opinion, opinion. Do you think there should be a clearer differentiation between folks that share opinions versus news? And have you seen that sort of merge over time? I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that, because I feel like it has merged. I feel like I just can't find news outside of going to like very specific people. It's just kind of like opinion and news has sort of turned into one thing.
I would ask, are you watching? Because I don't think, like, at least the local news that I've experienced and worked for, like, it's pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we'll ask the people that we interview what side they're on. I mean, it could be like a controversial story where there are opinions, but most local news is pretty cut and dry, straightforward.
Yeah.
Here's the facts. There was a fire today. This apartment building was destroyed. There was a car crash today. It backed up traffic. Two people sent to the hospital. So I guess I'm wondering.
I'm talking specifically like your cable national news, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, those guys.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's why I think you share that sentiment with a lot of people, and that's why people are sick of it, because it is a lot of opinion. And like I said, when I commented about that in my video, so many people were like, it seems like people in the news are only giving their opinions. So I think they share that same feeling that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think either they should be more clear about it, or I'm not sure why they're doing that, because that kind of goes against the whole idea of being impartial.
Right. And I think that's why they're like going back to that mistrust question. Like if I were to share my opinion, like I think that's why. It's I think that's exactly why. It's because you have folks, my opinion, like anybody in the comments, feel free to lynch me. I don't care. It's like there is a lot of, like, I feel like the journalistic integrity of a lot of networks has gone out the window, especially on the national scale, because they're transitioning what it seems like out of a model that is incentivizing views at all costs. And clicks at all costs. And if they do it in the guise of opinion, then they can get away with saying whatever they want, because they can come back and say, well, that was our opinion. It wasn't a news channel. It was an opinions channel. Rachel Maddow, Tucker Carlson, whoever, just name whoever you want. Right. But I feel like, but that's a sad thing, because now as I'm talking, I'm like, okay, well, why? Like, I haven't turned on the local news once. And that is the thing from your description. That's the thing that's actually going to be the least partial. And honestly, the one that's going to be most relevant to me, because I live here. Like,
Exactly.
what do I care what any of these national network news are telling me? Why aren't I watching the local news, you know? But
If I were you, I'd pick local, and I think you
yeah,
would experience a much different, type of delivery and content.
yeah.
I
But
have
you're saying, yeah,
no
but you're,
interest in watching like mainstream media. Like I said, I
yeah,
like some of the deep dives that they do on YouTube, but
yeah,
like I don't actually
yeah,
really watch much TV in general, but especially I just, that doesn't appeal to me.
yeah. And I wonder how many people in like, say, our generation, like I have to keep reminding myself that local and national news are two different monsters. It's two different beasts,
Totally.
you know? But I don't
Yeah.
think about that. I just think news, it's on TV, oh, news, you know, oh, CNN, whatever. It's just news and everything's like this, but it's really not. So, and then when you were talking about sort of the local news was trying to adjust to this changing landscape, or was there, I don't know if you can talk about this, was there a noted, and I think you may have mentioned this earlier, and apologies if I missed it, was there a noted reduction in how many people were viewing those local news over time? Was it an obvious like did you know, or
Oh,
did you have any data around that?
so funny enough, like some stations, so you're talking about like the ratings, like the
Yeah.
Nielsen like sweeps ratings, how many households are watching, like
Are less people
those
watching
numbers.
local news basically?
Oh, I would guess so. Most stations that I worked for didn't really like to show us the books. Some of them did, and we would have like a pizza party and go over the numbers of the latest ratings period. But it was mostly to see how we stack up versus the competition.
Hmm.
But if your broadcast is at 6, and then Family Feud is on at the same time on another channel, we could see, yeah, are people watching the news or are they watching Family Feud? And
Yeah.
so I can't speak to it too well because I didn't always get to see the numbers, but yeah, I would say that there's definitely been, I read an article recently that, streaming services have definitely taken a huge chunk out of cable TV watchers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's like obvious.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I would guess, yeah, that it's going down.
I'm just guessing, like, is there a way for us to like find out? I'm just thinking out loud, what percentage of the viewership that's going away from, say, we know national news 100% has been taking a gigantic dive. At least some networks, most if not all networks have over time, especially for the last 10 years, call it. And then we think that might be happening to the local news as well. But I wonder that, so say it's gone down 50%. Is that 50% now sort of like spread out across a bunch of different individual news sources? Or is it 30% of that 50% that has gone to individual news sources, and then 20% is like, I quit, I'm just done. I just no more. I just want TikTok and Twitter, doom scroll. I don't really care. I've moved on. Like, I wonder what that, I don't know if you have any sort of sense of what that breakout could be, but like, I think about that a lot because I always think about like how much, like last time when you and I spoke, we talked about people following their passion, people having the time to follow their passion. But there's one
Yeah.
trend that I'm finding is that people have less and less time to really do that. It seems like
Yeah.
because of, I don't know, just the kind of world we live in, or people are just afraid to take risks to step out of it. And I wonder how many of those people that are in those situations just aren't able to seek out the news because they just have something they're dealing with, a really crappy job that they hate. They go home exhausted. They just want to switch off and they just go on Twitter or YouTube or whatever, or they watch Netflix until they fall asleep. Like, I wonder how much of the lessening news viewership is a symptom of people literally not having the mental bandwidth, like you said, of
Yes.
like, I just don't want the sadness anymore, or the news, because I literally can't handle it. But I don't know if that's a symptom of the news. It might be a symptom of everything else that's going on in their life.
I
How do you
think that
think
it's
about
a
that?
symptom. I think that a lot of people don't have the mental bandwidth for a lot of things because of the constant distraction. Um, Really, I feel like our attention spans have decreased. Maybe not everyone, and if you're not in that, crowd, good for you. But I think like even my parents, who are like in their 60s, like they're, I can see a difference. They're like on their phone more, And
Mm.
so I think that what you're finding is that people are staying informed, but they're staying informed by scrolling on Facebook or Twitter and getting a bite size of whatever the headline is. They read the headline, they know the story. You see a lot of that, like people that are like, oh, I know what happened today, but they're not taking the time to click on the article.
Mm.
So I feel like I'm seeing a lot of that.
Hmm.
I don't know if you would agree, but I mean that's, like think about how many things you can, learn about or become aware of just by scrolling on Twitter, like in just little bite-sized chunks, but like you're like, oh wow, like I'm all these different topics that if I were to just sit and read one article, like,
Yeah.
so but yeah, I think part of it too is that people don't have the bandwidth to, they don't want to hear the sad stories. I mean, I'm telling you, like, so many people tell me that they don't watch news. So many people. And I know because like I'll try to, part of my job was to ask strangers all the time, either door knocking or going and pulling up to a random grocery store parking lot, breaking out the camera, holding the mic.
Yeah.
Hey, as you're unloading your groceries into your car, can I talk to you really quickly? Oh man, Farzad, I hated that part. Like I was pretty good at it. We call it MOS. It's like man on the street interviews. So
Okay.
I called myself like the queen of MOS, but like
Okay.
dude, some days I would get shut down by like 15 people. And I'm like,
Wow.
dude, this is like draining. It's uncomfortable. Like, oh man. I was like, I'm not even like selling anything to you, but I felt like I was. But
Yeah.
those are tough. But
Why do
yeah.
you think you were getting shut down? Did it tell you why?
Some days, like if it was a really easy topic, like there was this like whale sculpture that was put, in downtown, and a lot of people thought it was hideous. So that was like
Hmm.
a really easy one to be like, what do you think of the whale? What do you think of the whale? That was like one of the easiest days that I had just trying to get like man on the street reactions.
Hmm.
But if you would do something else that was a little bit more controversial, or, like the abortion stuff, or, I don't know, getting raises for teachers, it's like, oh, yes, I have an opinion, but I don't really want to go on camera. A lot of people, they don't want to go on camera. They don't want to be on the news. Oh, I'm shy. Oh, whatever. So I think I would just get shut down for various reasons, really.
Did that
Um,
happen more towards the latter part of your career, or was it pretty consistent through the 8 years? Like, what percentage of people would shut you down on controversial topics?
I think it's gotten worse.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So more people are hesitant to, or more shy to go on camera and state their opinion on something that might be
Oh yeah.
controversial.
Like
Okay.
some of them like would just wave their hand at me before I even said a
Like,
beep.
no.
They're just like, no. And I'm like, all right, well, this
Hmm.
rejection really is motivating. It's tough. It's tough, but you
I
know,
wonder. So I wonder how much of that is, man. Like, so my brain like goes to like a couple different places here, but there's been this. Agree or disagree, you let me know. But there has been, in my opinion, in the last say 5 to 10 years, especially, this whole cancel culture movement. Like this whole
oh yeah.
thing where if you say an opinion that's potentially controversial, you will have a mob of people who's likely to
Yeah.
be extreme minority with a very large megaphone is going to come in and be like, "How? Why did you say that? But you're wrong." Without understanding that, hey, there's a lot of nuance here. It's just an opinion, right? And I feel like that corner of the world has gotten much, much louder, which has discouraged people to speak their mind as freely as they used to out of fear of being retaliated against. What
Right.
do you think that's a accurate statement that could be causing that decline? I'm just thinking out loud. I'm just curious to see if that sort of like resonates with you in any way.
Yeah, I think for some people, especially because, it's not just going to be on TV where most people won't rewind, but like most of our stories, go on the internet, you know. I mean, actually all of our stories go on the internet, but like, you know, some stations like are really big on YouTube, and so like more eyes are going to see it. And but I think too, like a lot of people just don't like the camera, like straight up. Like even when the camera wasn't on and like I'm carrying it like on my side of my tripod and it's clear that like I'm not shooting anyone, they're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, like don't get me. And I'm like, I don't even have it on, dude. Like,
Yeah.
so people don't like the camera. No,
Yeah.
no, but yeah.
That makes sense.
No, I was thinking the funniest, and this just like got me so annoyed whenever people would ask me. I don't know why. But like I would show up to a story with like, you know, think about my camera. It's like a big camera, like $10,000 camera. And they're like, are you with the paper? I'm like, dude, what? How do you with the paper? I don't know. Maybe that was like me. Maybe I was being overreacting or whatever, but I was just like, how do you think I'm with the paper? Or like I would call them and I'd say what station I'm with. And then I would show up to the interview and they're like, oh my God, you want this on camera? Oh, I wasn't mentally prepared for this. And I'm like, but I told you who I work for. I don't know.
Yeah. That's funny. That's funny.
It was kind of funny.
I mean, I totally get it. I mean, even with this YouTube thing, like for me, like this camera is still weird. Like looking at the fact that I have to look at it for people to think that I'm looking at you and them while you're right here, like you're right here, but I'm looking here so that I can talk to you. What the fuck is that? It's so trippy. It's weird. So weird. And then just like the concept of like having like being vulnerable in front of something and to like, you know, like speak your mind. Oh my God, I can't even imagine. Yeah. I get it. You know, I get it. You know what I'm saying? Cause you can't even like, you have to like look at the camera. You have to have your microphone right here. You know, like
picture being like ready to go live, you know, 30 seconds and all of a sudden you're like out at the Capitol or something. And this group of like teenagers comes up to like stare at you while you're about to go live. And you've practiced your thing like 10 to 15 times. And then 15 seconds. And then you're like, what if I blank? Or, you know, what if I, and you start to doubt yourself. Like I would go through that. And then I'm like, dude, no, you've been doing this for 8 years. You'll be fine. And I was fine, but it was like, kind of uncomfortable because I'm like, oh man, like these kids are watching me. They're taking pictures. Oh, the news is here, you know, like it's like a lot of pressure. So yeah, being live is a whole different ball game.
Can't even imagine. Do you ever see those blooper reels on YouTube of like reporters? Oh my God.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you ever fear that you were going to make it onto one?
I made it onto one about eating like spicy foods.
Okay.
And I think I made it onto another one when a llama spit on me, but that wasn't actually live, but it was so funny that I posted it. Like it was hilarious. Like these llamas like showed up in this lady's yard. No one would claim these llamas. The city was like, you're in an unincorporated area, so we're not going to do anything with the llamas. So it was like kind of a very small town news story, but it was quite entertaining. Yes. No one would claim the llama. So I did what's called a stand-up where I recorded myself and I just like went straight up to the llamas, which most people probably wouldn't do. Yeah. And like mid-take, you know, the llama like spits on me. And I was like, man, that is so funny. And I uploaded it to my social media. And I remember my news director at the time, she was like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Like, you're going to be on the, and I'm like, I want to be on the internet. Like, I want someone to pick this up and make it viral. Cause like, I was like, it's not like it's just a funny animal video. Like, who cares? So anyway,
this wasn't Utah.
No, this was in Oregon.
Okay.
But I just remember like
random llamas.
She was around. So like not in approval of me sharing it. Like, and I'm like, dude, people love news bloopers. People love them.
Yes.
Like,
yeah. There was one night where I was binge watching Like I remember vividly. It was my wife and I had a long day, and my wife plays video games, so she was in her office playing video games, and I had a glass of whiskey, and I'm like, "What's on YouTube today?" And I saw news bloopers, 30 minutes long. I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
I click on it, and I'm just like literally getting drunk watching whiskey and just freaking like, what's next? Oh, another 30-minute news
Yes.
bloopers video? Yes. And I did that for
Oh,
like 2 hours.
oh no.
It was so sad. It was
Oh
the
yeah.
worst. I'm like, man, if
No.
somebody watched me do this, they'd be like, wow, this guy has the saddest freaking life ever. But I had a blast. It was funny.
Oh yeah. No,
Yeah.
it is fun. It is
Yeah.
funny. And yeah, I mean, as long as like it's not too terrible,
No, it's just like very like benign, funny
Yeah.
stuff. But
Yeah.
along those lines, what would you say what was the hardest thing? Man, yeah, I'll ask the question. What was the hardest thing about being a journalist?
Um, on a not so deep level, like meeting the deadline. So, we go into the morning meeting, we pitch story ideas, and sometimes you make calls for hours and no one gets back to you. And it's understandable because usually we're doing things the same day. It's a day turn. And so people are busy, they're at work, you're like this reporter trying to get a hold of them. So like meeting the deadline when things weren't panning out, or maybe your story falls through and you have to find another story midday, those were like logistical, hardships. But then like the obvious one is the emotional toll that it takes on you when it's like, okay, these teenagers were killed out or killed in a shootout in front of the school. Reach out to the mom.
My God.
And you know what's crazy? Most of the family members would talk to you. And I think like for some, like they wanted to just share about their child and have someone care and have that memory live on and just like get that out there. But that, like I'm not a robot. I'm not like, oh, got that one in the bag. I'm like, man, that's tragic. Or having to like show up to a scene where someone just died. Like maybe they're still there laying in the street and you're just like, this is real. Like, this is real life. Like I had a couple times in my career where I was like trying not to cry, about to like talk about whatever it was that I was covering. And I get it. You sign up for that. And it really gives me a lot of respect for people that are like paramedics or people that are, tow truck drivers or that see like really gnarly, like have to physically handle really horrible things. But I don't want to minimize, what we go through to talk to those family members or people close to those tragedies. So
Yeah.
those were the hardest things, I think. And like you'll never forget them. You'll never forget those saddest stories that you covered.
Can't even imagine. Did those, like the thing that went through my mind is as you went through all those experiences, I'm assuming you probably had a little bit more closeness to humanity in some way, the dark
yeah.
sides and the bright sides as well.
Yeah.
Are
Totally.
you overall a more optimistic or pessimistic person after going through those experiences?
Well, for sure, a more careful person.
Okay.
Because, like even seeing like seatbelt safety. I mean, my goodness, when you see enough people that were ejected when they got in a car crash because they weren't wearing a seatbelt, it's like, or you see enough people that died because they were trying to pass someone to save how much time? I don't know. Like definitely made me more careful and like, wow. But I'm still a pretty optimistic person. Yeah, I think, there's a lot of sad stuff, but there's also a lot of good people that like really step in those times of need.
Yeah.
So there's totally like, yeah, faith restored in humanity, but I don't know. It's just like, even that mass shooting in Texas, I was just like, man, I just feel so bad for everyone in that situation. And I'm sure it was hard on those journalists that had to be there, for hours standing outside of the school, but it's just, yeah.
Yeah.
Did I tell you about running into the dead body investigation on my bike ride, like my first day out of news?
You told me briefly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it was just a weird sign from the universe. Cause obviously I quit my job in news, and it was like my first Monday as a YouTuber. And I'm like
Yeah.
on a bike ride on my lunch break, and I run into crime scene tape, and, I guess they found a dead body, and there
Yeah.
was a news photographer there. And I was like, wow, I don't have to stay here. Like, I don't
Yeah.
have to stay here for hours, wait for law enforcement to like finally come over to me and be like, yep, here's what we know, investigation's still ongoing, it's hot, it's whatever. It's like, all right, good luck.
Yeah.
This guy, he was like, I'm so jealous. I'm like, well,
Yeah. So now you're day 4 of that
yeah,
newfound, I guess,
freedom,
freedom to do whatever you want.
freedom.
Walk me through it. How do you feel? So what are the sort of feelings? Has it changed day to day, or is it like sort of like walk me through it? Because it must feel pretty wicked, pretty
Oh,
weird.
it just feels so nice to have the flexibility. And yeah, I feel this like huge weight like lifted off my shoulders, and so
Mm.
much less stress, and just like genuinely excited to make content for the channel. Um, I made actually I'm making a video about why I left news, because I think some people find that stuff interesting, why anyone leaves their job after almost a decade. And
Yeah.
so, I decided to like hike to a hot spring and kind of make it more visual than just here. So you can't see behind me, I guess, which is a good thing. But yeah, it's been really freeing. And I like, people are like, how's not working? And I'm like, you guys, I'm still working. Like, I even
Yeah.
had like a new brand sponsorship come in. I'm like, I'm still
Nice.
working. Like, but it's just not, it's weird being self-employed. It's still very new. It's
Yeah.
certainly, it hasn't sunk in yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I did it. I mean, we talked about it briefly, you and I, when we were sort of wrapping up our early conversation, but the roller coaster ride, that what that entails is so odd. And being somebody who is now in charge of their own time fully is a really strange feeling.
Yeah.
It's a really strange feeling. I know for me, I don't remember if I told you, but by week 5, week 5, I started losing my mind, completely, utterly losing my mind, because I was so used to living in an environment where, just to give you a little bit of background, so I graduated college 2009, and since then I was working in jobs that required a lot of sort of very active jobs. So I would constantly have to be working the job and constantly thinking about problem solving and so on and so forth. But I found it really addicting in a way, because it was very stimulating, super
Yeah.
stimulating. And Tesla took it to another level, because that's like crazy speed and whatever. But after 10 years of, basically 11 years really close to doing that, and then turning off the switch and then sitting idle, like I remember the first 2 to 3 weeks were nice. I was like, wow, oh my
Yeah.
God, I can just get up whenever I want, and I don't have to like check my email. What? It's like the
Yeah.
craziest feeling ever. It was incredible. And then I remember about week 5, something, and I don't know if this is a person to person thing, because I'm very interested about how people go through those journeys, because I'm trying to like see, okay, that happened to you, that's very fascinating, this is what happened to me. I just remember I started completely losing my mind, and it gave me an opportunity to discover more about myself. I was like, okay, got it. So I'm a person who literally is incapable of standing still, because half
Yeah.
of my thought process of leaving like the workforce and going on my own is like, okay, so wife and I are super fortunate to where we are financially, we're independent, we can do whatever we want. I'm like, I'm gonna travel for freaking 4 years, I'm gonna be chilling on the beach, you know what I'm saying, just not gonna be doing nothing. And then by week 5, I'm like, I need something to do right now, like I need
Yeah.
something to do right now. And I'm curious to see how that morphs for you over time too, because it's
Yeah.
like, and like I'm very interested to see your journey pan out, because I think, and we talked about this before, and I would love to talk more about it here, but like there's that movement of people that are really getting after, we need to follow our passions after COVID, you know?
Totally.
Can you talk about why you left? Like, do you want to save it? If you want to save it for the video, completely understand, but could you talk
Yeah.
about why you
Yeah.
left?
Yeah. Um, there were, I would say that there were like 3 things that happened at the same time. Like, my satisfaction with news started to go down. I was the main anchor at my last station, which was a much smaller city. I moved here to a big city, but I was like a smaller fish again, which was fine, but it was more of a grind. It wasn't like being the main anchor. I still had the same problems with the industry. It was nothing. I had a good station, but it was like, I've been in the industry for over 8 years. So all of those glaring issues that I was talking about, were still there. And at the same time that was going down, my channel was going up. And, this channel was just growing like crazy. And, like it went from nothing to over 42,000 subscribers in just about a year. So
it's awesome.
That was like, okay, it's starting to make me money. This is more fulfilling. And then at the third time, or the third thing is that, I had saved some money and I had some, people, supporters of the channel that wanted to help me even further and kind of donate to the cause of me going full time. And it just dawned on me. I'm like, I just turned 30. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I'm not saying I don't want those things, but this is like a window of opportunity where all of these things are, kind of lining up to scream at me to like, try this out. Because we all know that, the fallback is just get a job. And I don't think that it will be that hard, especially with the mass exodus that I've personally seen of people in news, or even if I don't want to go back to news, do something in PR. I mean, I have skills. So I don't think that there's ever like this fear of becoming homeless, right?
Yeah.
My parents said that I could always come back and live with them. There's other opportunities, but I was just like, I'll be okay. And this sounds exciting. And I think that, fortune favors the bold, and life is about like taking those risks. And I think also like I went to, when I met you in April at the Cyber Rodeo TeslaCon thing, I was like, all right, universe, tell me if I should quit my job. And like all these people recognize me, in Austin, like, and my channel is like mainly SpaceX. So it's like weird to have all these Tesla people like know who I am. And I'm out there like autographing Teslas. And I'm just like, man, dude, like, like I have like a footprint and I just want to make this footprint bigger. And I even told my boss, I said, look, if I didn't have the channel, I'd probably be trying to make it to the anchor desk. But now that I see something that's not sad, and yes, like I still need to grow it for revenue and whatever, but I think that just comes with time and consistency, you know? And so it was just like, and since I've made the decision, like people have been really supportive and they're like, dude, that's inspiring. That's inspiring. And it's like, well, I'm sure you have your own scenario where you could do something similar, but I get the fear. I was totally afraid. Like I thought about it for like, at least like 4 or 5 months before I was like, all right, I just need to do it. I just need to do it. I just need to have, and I think one of the things that was holding me back was having that conversation with my boss. And I was like, if that's holding you back, like, girl, you're holding yourself back, because if you're actually not worried about the channel's success and those aren't your like concerns, you're just worried about this like awkward conversation, like, come on, rip the Band-Aid, like have the conversation. Cause, and like, I've also thought of like this new rule that I don't know, it makes sense to me, is like, if you get really worried about something, you're anxious about something in the present, just think like, am I going to be worried about this in a year from now? Like whatever that is, cause like I had to like pay a settlement, for example, to get out of my contract. And there were people that said that I shouldn't have paid it and I should have just tried to, walk away. And I'm like, I don't want to play that game, but I'm like, am I really going to be worried about this amount of money in a year from now? Probably not, And so, it was a big decision, but I've seen a ton of people leave news, like people in their dream markets, like big cities like Phoenix and Seattle. Like from the outside, it would appear that they've made it, they have it all, and then they leave. And I don't know everyone's situation or why, but
Yeah.
news is losing a lot of people, and it's kind of a trend that you can't ignore.
It's so many industries, you know, there's
Yeah.
so many industries. And it's like part of me wonders, I've asked a few people this, but did COVID give you any sort of time to reflect about what you really wanted to do?
Um,
Does that apply to you at all?
I never like worked from home or really had that separation. So I wouldn't say that, I would say that seeing other people reflect made me reflect.
Mm,
Yeah. Like seeing other people quit and just like, yeah, I think it's like for the people that have said that I inspired them, like who knows, maybe they're gonna like quit now.
yeah.
Like I think it's just kind of like this domino effect, of when you see other people leave what seems to be great on the outside. And I think like you're finding a lot of people that would rather have um, quality of life than money.
Yeah.
Like working for a good place with good people is more important than making more money.
Yeah. There's so many different facts. It's so wild. It really is so wild because it really is. Like, I wonder what percentage of the population that's working a job today that say is looks extremely rewarding from the outside is not fulfilling for that person, but then they feel like they feel bad for not feeling fulfilled because so many people will want to be in their position,
Yeah.
and that's why they stay the whole time. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wonder
Yeah.
what percentage of those people were, because I'll be completely honest. Like the last 6 months of my career, was I spent a lot of that time. I was grappling with that. I'm like, okay, I work for this incredible company. It's been very fruitful. I'm working with incredible people. There's so many good things going with it, but at the same time, like, man, but like there's a bigger calling here. Like I don't know. Like I don't know if it was a thing where maybe my time was up mentally and I just wanted to my mind shift to something else, to making more impact somehow, but I had no idea what it was. And that was really messing with me because I'm like, man, I love it here, but like I feel like I should be doing something else. I feel like I should be stepping aside, allowing all the people that really want that job to take it, and then I go do the thing that I'm meant to do. But the thing that was fucking with me, completely honestly, it was fucking with me so badly, was that I didn't know what that was. I
Yeah.
didn't know which was making it even harder to make the
Right.
jump, you know? And I think the thing that I was super lucky to have was to have, because I remember this was like, it was like 4 months before I actually gave my notice. I go to my wife, I'm like, babe, listen, like, I feel like we're having really good, but I feel like we should take some time and just travel the world and see what's in store for us. And like I was fully expecting her to say, that's crazy. We're going to start a family soon. We just moved down here to Austin. Just keep going at it. I'm sure the path will show itself. And then she was like, no, that's a great idea. Do it. I'm like, what? I'm looking for like
Yeah.
somebody to like talk me down from this. What are you doing?
Yeah.
She's like, no, that's a great idea. Take the risk. And she said exactly what you said. Is she's like, what, are you afraid that you're never going to be able to find the job again if this whole thing fails? I'm
Right.
like, no, I guess not. She's like, okay, then what are you afraid of? I'm like, huh. And so like that forced me to really deep down, like do a lot of checks within myself as a person. But okay, so who are you really? Like,
Yeah.
are you gonna like are you just a person who works for Tesla and Elon Musk, or are you Farzad, the individual who has bigger passions and has more to his life than just working for an incredible company? It was like a very like almost spiritual like journey that I have to take to like figure out who the fuck I am. But what's
Right.
crazy is that this luxury that I have is I feel like is so freaking unique. And I am like trying to figure out how can more people have this? How can
Right.
more people have this sort of journey that, I think the both of us are kind of going through to try to figure out like, or at least we know where we want to go and we're taking the risk to go after it.
Right.
It was messed up, man. That was a weird 4 to 6 months where I chose to leave the company. And I don't know if yours was as difficult, but mine was fucking hard. I
I
mean,
think
yeah.
like the pain of indecision like once you make a decision, even if it's a hard one, like there's so much relief. When you're back and
Yeah.
forth and doing these mental gymnastics, it's draining.
Yeah.
I totally understand. It's like, you want to make this move, but it's like, well, what's on the other side? Should I not? Should I not? And just like doing that dance for so long. Yeah. Indecision is like painful.
Yeah.
It's better to just decide,
Yeah.
like one way or the other. Like, even if, it's like I think, should I break up with this person is like a really good example, right? Like going through that back and forth in your mind, like once you make that decision, even if it's like sad and traumatic and heartbreaking, it's like, at least I can like move on from this because I'm not what if anymore,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's so
it's
true.
good that you made the decision. It's good that we both did.
Yeah.
And man, dude, like life is about taking risks, and
It is.
like you can say that. It's one thing to talk the talk, it's another thing to walk the walk.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, I mean, I have a completely different situation than you because, obviously I wasn't working at Tesla. But like for me, like it was just like timing and circumstance and honestly a little bit of luck and support that made this possible. Had I not had that, I don't think this would be possible. But I'm like, well, now that I have that, I don't want to waste it.
Yeah.
So
What percentage of that equation would you say is the fact that you're confident in yourself, that you will be you will be able to figure it out, either if it's successful or unsuccessful, that you'll be able to figure out? What percentage of that equation is that confidence?
I think a lot. Maybe it's a little too much.
Okay. Is there such a thing as too much?
I just think I look at the evidence, which is the growth and the trajectory and the things that people tell me that, oh my gosh, it's going to blow up. It's going to blow up. And, it hasn't quite blown up yet, but I'm like, I'm going to take it seriously as I have been. I have skills. And yeah, I think I haven't been too worried about it completely failing. And also like, dude, you should fail. Like, look at Elon and his companies. Like, don't be afraid of failure. That's like a rookie move,
Yeah. Does he play any role? Like, as obviously, because your channel is, space centric. Does Elon Musk play any role as a role model at all for any of the things that you're looking to achieve?
Yeah. I think because I had just finished reading Liftoff like about a month and a half or 2 months before I was like, yeah, I'm quitting. And I think reading Liftoff and, how close SpaceX was to absolutely failing, I was like, but they didn't stop. Like they kept going. They kept going even when people were laughing at them, even when they were losing money, even then, like when they didn't even know if it was going to work. Like, dude, like, I don't know if you've read that, but it's incredible.
I don't think I did.
Oh my goodness.
I read his autobiography by, I forget who it was, but that was the only one I read. Would you recommend it?
Oh, yes. Eric Berger wrote Liftoff, the desperate early days of SpaceX. And let me tell you, they were desperate as F.
Not surprised.
But I'm just like, dude, like they made it, So like, yeah, sure. Like I have had some videos where I put a lot of, one thing I've noticed, which is so weird. I've had 2 videos now where I've actually spent like a good amount of money to have someone like professionally, shoot the video for me and like be my photographer. Both of those videos sucked, dude. Tanked. They tanked. I'm like, dude, I put like all this effort and like high quality. No one cares.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just like random or topic. I don't know. Maybe it's not, but I'm like, all right, here's a video that I shot on my cell phone and it has almost 600,000 views. Yet these videos where I'm spending like hundreds of dollars to have someone help me make it look professional and no one cares. I'm like, well, that's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to get burned again, so I don't know, dude.
I mean, I think it's a reinforcement that says content is king. I think that's what it really comes down to. It's just like people, and that's why like I'd love to pick your brain on this too, because as a YouTuber too, like I find myself in this trap. It's like, okay, cool. So I spent X amount of dollars on this studio, which my wife helped me put together, and I think she did a phenomenal job. I
Yes.
think she did a really, really good job, the lighting and the camera and everything. So great, cool. That's great. And I'm like focusing on freaking titles. I'm focusing on thumbnails. I'm like constantly focusing. But like I have to constantly remind myself, it's like, okay, like what's really important here? Like if somebody clicks on your stuff and then it's shit, like why would they ever come back?
Right.
Like the ultimate thing here is that your content has to be great. Like it has
Right.
to be super, super good. It has to be helpful, and people are going to have to look for it. And I feel like I constantly have to rewire my brain because I'm in the stupid analytics.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what's the click-through rate? What's the engagement? And I constantly have to tell myself, stop. Just make good stuff. Do
Right.
you like fight with that at all? Like what's that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, one of the things that I struggle with the most is audience retention.
Mm,
And I mean, yeah, keep creating content and it gets better over time. And I do think that there's been like an evolution in my YouTube style, because my YouTube style is different from my news person style, like
yeah.
for my job. I can be more creatively expressive on YouTube, but I think the metrics are helpful. But yeah, ultimately, I mean, Mr. Beast, who's like the most successful YouTuber, just says create better content.
Yeah.
That's it. So,
I mean,
you
I
know,
think his stuff too benefits from like the fact that he can just come up with an insane idea, and then like the idea itself is like so ridiculous.
yeah,
Like real life Squid Games. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds amazing.
right, right.
Like, why wouldn't I watch that? I donate 10,000 cars to 10,000 people or whatever,
Right. But yeah, think about the budget that he's been able
It's
to
crazy.
build up to do that, like, so it is kind of hard for Joe Schmo to
Yeah.
emulate that. But yeah, like just making the best content. And for me personally, I think one of the best strategies is to go to places in person. It's why I'm going to Texas next week,
Mm,
because people appreciate it when I take them to Starbase, you know?
yeah.
So,
When you're looking to make content, are you like, do you have certain types of ideas that you want to bring to life, or are you more like monitoring what's going on? Like how do you think
both,
about both? Okay. Okay.
both. So, like, I'll have, a person that I want to interview. Like, for example, I have an interview set up with Tim Dodd next month, and he's everyday astronaut.
Yeah,
He's
he's a
this
monster. He's the man.
beloved YouTuber. Oh my gosh, it's going to be amazing. But then I have, maybe there's something in the news cycle that I want to make a video that's kind of short form and more urgent. I'm not going to make it in a month from now. So I kind of do both. Like, I'm like, oh, what's more of like an evergreen video that you can release at any time versus what do you need to prioritize editing tonight to get it out tomorrow?
Yeah.
But I'm always trying to think of story ideas, and I have a running list, and some of them require that travel. And so,
Hmm.
but to me, that's the best kind,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're like interacting with people in person. The one thing that I find difficult with the channel is that I'm naturally gravitating more to these podcast style content, because ultimately I've made a decision that says I'm not doing anything unless I enjoy it. Like I'm not
Yeah.
going to create something for somebody else. I'm going to do it for me. Okay,
Right.
right or wrong, I'm going to do that. And I'm finding that these conversations are the most stimulating for me because I get the most joy out of it, because I get to see how other people think about certain things, and I get to ask them questions. I get to learn, and I make it public for everyone else to hopefully grab some things from that conversation for themselves that can help them with whatever they're doing,
Yes.
right? So, but I find it harder as I get deeper into it, because like, for example, this conversation, like I would say is going really, really well, but I feel like if it was in person, it would flow even better, because I feel like we can riff off each other a little bit better. Like I
Yeah.
feel like I sometimes have to wait for half a second and see if you're going to answer a question, or like I'm not really sure if you're done, because I'm not
Yeah.
looking at you, I'm looking at the freaking camera, so I
Yeah.
can't read your body. It's like it's disastrous almost, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So it's like
Yeah.
I'm almost wondering if I've been trying to figure that out. Like, should I start doing these podcasts in person? Because there are quite a few folks around Austin that are part of the community. I'm like, should I just turn this freaking guest room into a podcast room and just have people over? We'll have a couple drinks. Why not? Right?
Why not? Totally. I mean, I saw Dave Lee. He rented out a studio in Austin. Yeah. And interviewed. Is it Jason? How do you say his last name?
James Dalma, I think.
Dalma.
Yeah.
James Dalma. Yes. But he did that in person, and I think he even asked his viewers, "Hey, do you guys like this format better?" So, I think that there's a lot to be said for being in person. It's more organic, Yeah. Totally.
It just gets there's like
I feel like you're looking at me, but apparently you're not.
I'm totally not. I've looked at you for a total of like 2 seconds, and I think it's probably I could probably make my setup better. I just know that if I don't look at the camera, like I feel, I don't know, maybe I should just do this. Like, does that look weird? Probably looks weird, right?
No, don't do it.
I can't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a bad thing. So it's like, yeah, man. What's the hardest thing about YouTube for you?
I think just understanding what the algorithm wants, and also how hit or miss the revenue is. Very hit or miss. So you have to build up that Patreon. Mm-hmm. Limiting factor. He was also at TeslaCon. He has a huge Patreon, and he told me that 80% of his revenue is from Patreon. So he doesn't really care about the YouTube revenue that much. So I think that is a little bit of a struggle, but like I said, the more exposure the channel gets, the more people network. Like a brand might reach out to me and say, "Hey, Ellie, would you sponsor us on your channel?" Yes, I would.
Yeah. Yeah.
and like even today, having the Washington Post reach out, I'm like,
yeah.
Me? Are you sure you got the right email? But yeah, you just gotta, dude, it's with anything. You just have to be consistent. Like, you can't worry so much about it. Cause like, if you slow down, I think that's like the mistake that a lot of people make, is they just stop making content. They get discouraged and they stop.
Yeah. Yeah. The consistency is by far the most important thing that I found myself. It's like so important. Like, you got to do at least, like, I'm somebody that's trying to do at least 4 videos a week, and if there's a week where I miss, I think there was one week where I maybe put 3 up. Like, I don't monitor that stuff too closely, but I do notice like trends. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Like, YouTube really rewards like consistency, and it also likes not so long videos either. It depends. I guess it depends. It likes like around 10 minutes ish seems to be the sweet spot.
Well, dude, it's so hard to know. It's so hard to know.
It's a kind of a black box. You know, and they'll tell you like, well, it's not really people are just going to be watching different things. It's like, well, the trends can shift. I get it. But then sometimes like it will just like literally go from like this many to this many. I'm like, okay, interesting. I don't know what happened. And I tell myself, who cares? Like, you're doing this for yourself in the end. Like, okay, cool. You're doing this for yourself. Let it do whatever it does. But at the same time, I'm like, man, but I'm a little competitive. So I'm like, but I want to be good. Like, I want to be good at what I do, like, why wouldn't I be doing this unless I wanted to get better at it? Right, like, so how do I get better at it? So it's a very interesting dynamic. Interesting dynamic.
If I had the answers, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out the algorithm, but consistency and time, you'll evolve. I mean, you've already evolved, with your channel. Yeah. And I'd say it's doing pretty good.
Yeah, I'm very happy with it. What I'm very happy with is that there's a lot of positivity around the community that we're building here. And it's like, that's my favorite thing about it, And I'm somebody who reads the comments. Oh, do you read your comments? Are you like somebody?
Heck yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Generally a good or bad experience?
Oh, good. Sometimes, I used to wear like a lot of face makeup for TV, even though I have like pretty fine skin. I'm not wearing any face makeup right now. I'm wearing eye makeup. But anyway, people were like, like so many mean comments. Like, you look like a clown. Like, why do you wear so much makeup? This 6-year-old did your makeup. Did you do your makeup in the dark? And I'm like, geez.
Jesus
And then
Christ.
I went to Texas, like for the first time to see Starbase, and I didn't wear hardly any makeup. And everyone's like, we prefer that, Ellie. And I'm like, you know what? Fine. I'll just stop wearing face makeup. And I stopped even wearing it on the news. I was like, dude, I've never done this. But it was honestly like kind of nice because it was like,
Yeah.
yeah, now I don't have to spend money on it. I don't have to take it off my face every night. Like this, it's kind of hard to get face makeup off. And I'm like, so anyway, that was like the most negative comments that I got were about my makeup. But since I don't wear a lot of makeup anymore, they're all pretty supportive. Yeah.
Okay.
And most people just answer whatever question I ask them in the video. You know,
Yeah.
I got a lot of like really educated, smart people that watch me. So they're more than happy to share their opinion, which is great.
Yeah. I always find it fascinating when people feel the need to communicate how they feel about the way you look. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like it's like everybody has a right to their opinion, but I'm like, wow, okay, really? Like that's the thing?
Yeah. Even
Like that's
people,
the thing you're gonna
people would like back me up in the comments. They're like, dude, just comment on what the video is about. Like, she's
Yeah.
not here doing a makeup tutorial for you, but it is the internet. If you're going to be on the internet, you have to have thick skin.
Yeah.
These people probably wouldn't say these things to you in person.
Never.
And, you know, even sometimes like I would like kind of, you know, clap back and people would be pretty caught off guard that I was like responding to them and like, hey, you hurt my feelings, you know? And they're like, oh, I didn't mean it like that. And I'm like, well, what the hell did you mean it as?
Yeah. Like people oftentimes forget, even though you're like watching another person, like they forget it's a person. Like it's a human being. Like it's somebody that, even especially at this level, like we're just like random YouTubers that are covering a niche subject on the internet. And like sometimes the kind of comments that come through, I'm like, bro, like it's just so interesting. Like I don't even get. It used to like make me upset at the beginning when I would get like some sort of comment that was pretty pretty vicious, you know? But now I'm like, okay, it is what it is. Like, all right, fine. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm like, the mentality I have is you're probably having a really bad day and something has happened, you know, today that's making you upset. And this video for some reason made you more upset. And then you're like, oh, fuck this guy. You know, you look like whatever, or you sound stupid or whatever. But like, yeah, it's always so interesting. It just removes that sort of layer of humanity and personality when you're on the internet, you know. And I wonder if there's ways to sort of make that connection a little bit stronger when that you actually are speaking to another human being. But I don't know how you do that, you know.
I think people really appreciate vulnerability, and I think that's like kind of becoming, I don't know if trendy is the right word, but like you see more and more people opening up about their personal lives and, oh my gosh, I can relate to you, or you're so brave for sharing your story or whatever. But I think that is a way to humanize yourself. But dude, there's always going to be dicks online. Like there's always going to be assholes. Yeah. Even if they're just, So
is that something that you're personally trying to do more on your side? Because that's something that I've been trying to do more, is be comfortable being vulnerable. How do you think about that for yourself?
Yeah, I think over time I'm getting more and more. I mean, even like putting this video out that I'm editing about why I left my job, like that's pretty loud, you know, like I'm about to share that with like 42,000 plus people. And, you know, but I think that people will appreciate that. And perhaps I can even reach more people than just space, you know, enthusiasts with that story. So I kind of like it.
Yeah.
I think it's good, you know, and I've always considered myself an open book. It's just like now it'll be online, you know, so, but there's people that are way more vulnerable than me. So
yeah, there's like certain podcasts out there that like they're so open. Like people are so open to the point I'm like, do you like what is your mom watching this? Like what's your mom gonna think?
Right?
You
totally.
know?
totally. But I don't know,
Yeah.
when I get caught up in that, I'm like, you know what? I'm really not that important, like I'm really not, there's all these people in the world and everyone's the main character in their own story. I'm just like a side role. So, like they might think about it for a little bit, they might comment on it, but then they're going to go back to whatever's in their life,
That's so true.
you know?
That's a really good way of thinking about it. I feel like
Oh,
I should
it's
have that mentality more often.
yeah, it's like I mean, even yesterday, I posted a photo of me wearing a bikini top at the hot spring,
Hmm.
and I lost followers. Like I noticed immediately that I had lost 4 followers,
Hmm.
and I was like getting hung up on it. And then I'm like, dude, who cares?
Hmm.
Why do you care? I'm like, who cares? Right?
Yeah,
Like there are people that post way worse stuff, first of all.
for
Second of
sure.
all, grow up. I'm at a hot spring,
Why is that
like,
even bad? I mean, I think
dude, I don't
that's the
know.
weird thing.
I don't
Yeah.
know. And I'm not going to know who unfollowed. I'm not going to know why they unfollowed. But for me to like obsess about it and like, really get hung up on it and like let it ruin my mood, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't, yeah, I was like, you need to fix your attitude about this and your mindset. Um, so
Do you think that you have a separate set of challenges because like you tell me how this question sounds, but I'm just going to ask it because I like to ask controversial questions sometimes. Do you feel like you have different set of challenges in this space because you are a woman?
oh yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think people probably comment on your appearance as much as they comment on my appearance, I would
Mm-hmm.
guess.
No.
Um, but but that's also what I think makes me stand out is that I'm covering topics that a lot of girls don't usually talk about online. I mean, I don't see a lot of women talking about Starlink, and
Yeah.
that was what kind of like put me on the scene. And so, I think it's a good thing to get more. And I think a lot of people have commented on that. But yeah, I think we probably deal with more criticism. It's like you
Yeah.
have competing theories, right? Like one of them is like, you know, uh, be confident in your own skin and post whatever you want and own it. And then the other one is like, you have people, I mean, I don't know, maybe it makes them uncomfortable to see that, or maybe it makes them insecure, or they just judge it and they think, oh my gosh, she's a slut. I don't know. But at the end of the day, like you have to just, I mean, it's like Elon and whatever he tweets, he doesn't care.
Right.
So, you know, we get so hung up on what people think of us. And so I'm trying like more and more to like challenge that within myself
Yeah.
and like ask myself why. Like
Yeah.
even today, here's like a really stupid good example. My climbing friend who hadn't gotten back to me in a couple days, I was like, is he mad at me? Like, why isn't he answering me? And then I was like, dude, rationally, why would he be mad at you? Nothing
Yeah.
happened between you. You know what he told me today? He messaged me on Facebook and he's like, I dropped my phone off a cliff, so I haven't had a phone for like a week. And here I
Would
am. I made this whole scenario in my mind that like he was mad at me or like something happened. And I was like, but how? Like, so we can't, gosh, man.
Yeah.
We can just like assume what people think of us, and that's dangerous too because you don't know. You
That's
don't
so
know.
true. I mean, I
Oh,
feel like the only way to reach true freedom is to reach that mental state.
yes.
It really
Yeah.
is. And I mean, oh my God, my wife and I talk about this stuff all the time because she's kind of going through her own journey too. Like, she's like the three of us have this journey going on where we're trying to like discover ourselves and reach our passions. And we're extremely lucky to be where we are. But
Yes.
like that state of mind is the pinnacle of someone. I feel like it's the necessary step for someone to reach their true potential is that you have to have that mindset. And you have to be comfortable with that mindset, and you have to achieve that mindset everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Is that ultimately just be yourself, do what you want to do, obviously be a good person and try to be as compassionate as possible. But if you don't want to do something, don't do it. If you want to do something, do it. It's that simple. It's
And
that simple.
communicate. If you think, like, ask questions, communicate. Like, so many people just don't do the obvious thing. And you know, yeah.
It's so true.
I think it's we often forget these things, and then we have to remind ourselves.
Yeah.
But with this new transition, I'm really trying to prioritize not being stressed out. And so it's like, is this really worth stressing out about? You know, first of all, do you even have any evidence that this person's mad at you? No. And then it turned out that it was a completely innocent explanation that I couldn't have guessed, but you know, yeah. So
yeah,
I don't know.
We get into our heads a lot. That's what it really comes down to. I feel like all of us get into our own heads too much. And I think part of being able to take risks, period, is getting closer to that sort of mentality of like, you just live the life how you want it to live, and don't allow. There was this one book I read. Oh my God, Atomic Habits. Did you ever read that book before?
I've heard of that.
So good.
Yeah,
I've that one too. Good. Sapiens and Atomic Habits. Those two are must reads in my opinion. I think he talks about having making up made up rules. Like you don't make up rules that are just rules for the sake of being rules. You know, it's like, oh, I should feel this way about something, or no, I can't do that. I can't, you know, I shouldn't work after 8 o'clock, even if I really want to work on something. And then the rule becomes, okay, but why? Why not? Like, if that's what you want to do, fucking do it. Like, why is that such a bad thing? Oh, I shouldn't wake up at 10 o'clock today because, you know, I need to wake up at 6 o'clock every morning, because if I don't do that, I'm not disciplined. It's like, okay, is there anything stopping you from continuing that the next day? No. Right. Okay, so just do that. Like, it's okay, you know? And I get, like, there's a lot of, like, positives for being super disciplined. Like, there's a lot of positives for everything. But at the same time, like, I think if it just comes down to, like, achieving things that truly make you happy on a daily basis, even the small things, like, those things compound, man. Like, if you start your day with, like, 10 things that make you happy, the rest of the day is going to be fucking awesome. Because that's how you started your day. You set a cadence for that. Even if it's like, you know what, today I'm going to make myself my coffee a little bit stronger. Make it a little bit stronger, a little bit more caffeine. Okay, go for it. You know? You're right. It's like these small things. I don't know, man. Life is so weird. That's what it really comes down to. Life is the weirdest thing of all time. I can't get my head wrapped around life. It's so weird.
But are we in a simulation?
Are we in a simulation?
Yeah, are we?
Are we? I don't know, man. I feel like it's one of the... I mean, it's one of those questions that... I have a hard time not being with Elon, where it's one of the likeliest scenarios of this is that we are in a simulation. Because the way he explains it about, if you allow technology to go on for long enough, like, you would not be able to, like, why wouldn't you achieve a certain reality that is analogous with exactly. Look at Pong 40 years ago and compare it to freaking the latest video game. 40 years. Yeah. You know? And then you assume humanity lives on for another 100,000 years and technology keeps getting better. Right. Why wouldn't we have simulations?
Right.
You know?
Right.
What do you think?
Oh, I totally haven't ruled it out. I mean, I'm not exactly a religious person. I would say, I maybe I'm agnostic, right? I don't know. I think that, you know, there's a possibility of everything. But it is an interesting thought experiment. Yeah. I think I may have watched too much Black Mirror, you know, because a lot of that stuff, I'm like, man, that could be legit. Yeah.
That Black Mirror show is so freaking good.
I know.
It's so good.
They're coming out with a new season. So.
Yeah. I think you were the one who told me that.
Yes.
That they're working on that. Yeah. Oh man, that's awesome. Well, we're a little over an hour and a half. Yeah. What do you think? Should we wrap it up here?
Yeah. I hope people enjoy.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah. It's always fascinating. Like I'm afraid to ask the questions I want to ask. And I'm
No.
trying to get braver with it
Yeah. No, you did
because
great.
and I was also, I'll be honest, I'd be self-conscious. I was self-conscious 'cause I'm like, she did this for a living
Yeah.
for 8 years. And now you got this bozo like
Yeah.
asking questions to a journalist, trying to like, I do have confidence. I do have confidence in the fact that I know I try to like really get to the essence of how somebody thinks,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to practice that.
Yeah. No, I think
But
you did great.
thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, you did great.
Any last words for the people viewing? Anything you want to share from your side? Definitely plug your channel and any socials you have. But any last words before we wrap this sucker up?
No, thanks for watching. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. We love to have, that's the nice thing about YouTube. We can have long conversations and it doesn't matter. I don't know how many of you stayed along for the whole ride, but if you did, congratulations.
Thank you to all 4 people that have stuck along with
Yeah.
us. You'd be surprised. A lot more people watch these than you think.
Yeah.
A lot. I think the baseline for my podcasts, I mean, I don't have a huge fan channel, but there's going to be a solid 5,000 people that will watch this whole thing.
Wow.
And that's freaking awesome.
Yeah, it is.
That's awesome. Even if it's 5 people, it's awesome. But that's like,
because they can play it in the background, they can multitask. So
exactly.
that's kind of nice.
Yeah. It's the weirdest thing ever. If I really think about it, I'm like, wow, there's like that many people that are listening to this conversation, but it's also at the same time super rewarding, because I'm like, wow, people like, it's great. It's the most beautiful thing ever. It really is.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would say to people is like weigh in on what you think about the state of TV news. Do you watch news? Are you not watching news anymore? We love to hear your thoughts. We're having this conversation to start a discussion with you guys too. So
exactly right. Thank you. And then YouTube and socials for people.
Ellie in Space is my YouTube. My Instagram is Eliana in Space. My Twitter is eSheriffTV. And yeah, that's it.
And we'll have it all in the comments too for you
Yes.
guys to click on.
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you
of
very
course.
much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.